So now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. The question was, rotation, what's the deal? Dave says, before we get into rotation, I want to touch on two things. One, we are looking to take community feedback earlier in the pipeline so that we can actually implement your feedback onto the systems. You know, sort of tell you, hey, we've got this thing that's coming out in a couple of months. What do you think of this? Rather than releasing it and finding out you all hate it and then doing what we can. And the second point he made here read to me like, hey, just keep in mind, a lot of red tape in Legends of Runeterra. We're going to be doing baby steps here, not giant shifts. Then we get some good information on rotation. The first point being that a list of cards specifically selected by Riot is how they are going to be handling rotation. The Hall of Fame system from Hearthstone, if you will. They are going to be rotating out champions and their entire support packages in certain instances. They will not be rotating out entire sets, which makes sense. I talked about this last week with my thoughts on rotation in the Dark and Saga roadmap, about how you cannot just rotate sets in Legends of Runeterra because you released a region every time you released a set, and unless your intention is to re-release that region or those champions or what have you in the next expansion, which, as we saw earlier in the AMA, these sets are locked in about a year in advance. Rotation doesn't seem to be something that is finalized yet, so I seriously doubt their plan is to rotate, let's say, 5 of the base set champions and then re-release them in the next expansion that was already locked in 9 months ago. Do you see what I'm saying? So it always kind of had to be the Hall of Fame system or something like it. We at least knew that we couldn't rotate set by set like Magic the Gathering does. The second point is that they plan to support the Eternal format just as they do the normal format. You'll still have PvP, you'll still have friendly matches, you'll still have Path of Champions with the rotated cards. But to me, I have never seen a digital card game successfully push their Eternal format without running Tier 1 events for it. And in this case, or at least big in-client tournaments, but in Legends of Runeterra, all we have for in-client tournaments right now is the seasonal, so you'd have to be running Tier 1 events. Because without Tier 1 events, why am I playing your Eternal format? It is something that I will do for the first month because, you know, maybe there are some degenerate combos with the new cards and what you just rotated that I want to try out. But effectively, you're going to find yourself in the Hearthstone Wild situation where nobody plays Wild because why on earth would they? It's something kind of fun to revisit when the normal format just absolutely sucks, but there's a lot of pressure tied to open tournaments and qualifying through the standard format. So it's almost like, with the way that they're talking about it now, if they do just, you know, sort of copy the Hearthstone model, which in my opinion, from a consumer standpoint, did not seem like a successful model, we're just going to copy that and paste it right in here, even though it kind of sucked, just so that we can kind of say that the champions are in Legends of Runeterra. Oh, I really like Nautilus. That's my favorite champion. Should I play this game? We can go play it in the bumfuck Wild format where you have 15-minute queues because it's got 5% of the player base of the standard function. Like, it makes absolutely no sense to me if we're not going to be running in-tournament stuff, in-client tournaments for the Wild format. Why bother having one? The player base is going to completely fall off a cliff after a couple of months. It's not sustainable for a digital card game. There's no value in crafting the older cards once you get into the game a couple of years down the line. It's just like, in a standard card game, or a paper card game rather, the reason that you can have Eternal format is because, like, my physical cards rotate out and I'm like, hey, I spent real people money on these. I'd like to be able to do something with them. In a digital card game, and especially because they have referenced in this AMA that they feel that their collection model is very generous, which in all fairness it is, they don't, you know, like when we nerf cards, you don't get compensated for that, right? Because the progression system is so generous. So when your cards rotate out, our progression system is so generous that you can just get the new cards. Your old cards didn't really have value that you're missing out on. Nobody's dropping $600 on Legends of Runeterra every time a set drops to build their new favorite deck just to have it rotate 6 months later, which is sort of the last thing. How often is rotation going to be happening, and is there like a set point of how new a card can be to sort of be safe from rotation? For example, you could rotate every 6 months, you could rotate every 3 months, you could rotate every year. The world is really their oyster when it comes to how often they want to do this, and they haven't really decided from my understanding here based on this answer. They've also talked about rotating things back in, which I think Hearthstone has done as well with Hall of Fame cards. I'm not 100% on that. I might have just completely made that up. I think I just completely made that up, but you know, you take out a champion, you put in a champion. It's this sort of self-curating of the format on the back end by the dev team, which, like, I'm pretty okay with. You know, I don't think I've seen this before, and I'm not necessarily opposed to trying out a new way of rotation, since, again, they can't really do it in the standard way. But I am curious about, you know, one, how often this is going to be happening, and two, is there a protection period? For example, a new set, like, let's say the next set drops, right? The Dark and Saga Part 2 drops, and rotation drops with it. Like, can they even have the option to rotate Kane? Like, he just came out a set ago. What about Trundle? You know, he was Call of the Mountain. Do we have to get through, like, Rising Tides cards first? So that is a question that I'm hoping they will answer, and I'm not sure they will. It might be more arbitrary than that, just in terms of, like, you know, is that, like, we won't rotate anything that came out in the last 6 months. Is that going to be a rule that they have? I don't actually know. I'm not sure that they will tell us when they find out either. They might just want to be able to keep it arbitrary, and but it is weird to rotate in a format of digital cards where you can just nerf old things that are too powerful. You don't have to just completely remove them from the format. So because we are a digital card game, the rotationary system that they've gone with sort of feels more like an answer to having a small team and not having the manpower to constantly nerf cards that are a problem or change systems in a way that keep the game fresh and interesting, and instead we're just going to move these champions to the retirement home, potentially just to bring them out later. But anyway, that is sort of the end of the AMA. I hope that was helpful. If you didn't get a chance to read it, or if you want to, of course, the link for this Reddit thread is in the description below. If you just want to click on that and peruse through here, because I did kind of blow through things, but I hope that was a good summary of it for you. And let me know in the comments what you think of rotation, because I've seen a lot of different takes on this. You know, this is my second video about it, so I'm pretty much said my piece at this point, but I am curious hearing what the rest of the community sort of thinks about this, especially people that aren't in the same, you know, don't exist in the hyper-competitive space that I do. Maybe like more casual players could let me know how they sort of feel about this system. Like, if your favorite champion is potentially on the chopping block, does that affect how much Runeterra you play? But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.